first of all, we are talking about a project that involves only 100,000 out of 900,000 refugees. It's necessary to put things into perspective. We have never said that we were against the issue of the island. Never. Never. The only thing we have said is that we were ready to engage with the Bangladesh authorities to assess the possibilities of the project of the island. And we are doing that. We have already had a first visit to the island. It is foreseen a second one, a technical one, because it is not just a question of using the island as a magic solution. It's the question of analyzing the prospects for the project of the island, its sustainability in the long run, and the capacity to receive and create conditions for a permanent settlement, which for the time being we have not come to any conclusion. I don't know if there is anything you want to add.
On the issue of the safe zones, you know, those of you who cover international news know very well that in so many refugee situations this comes up as a solution. Can we create safe zones? And it is a very understandable proposal. The problem is, you know, I speak not from a political perspective. I'm not a political actor, but from a humanitarian perspective, the question I would ask is, okay, there is a zone, safe zone. How safe is the safe zone? That's what needs to be done. So in order to make it safe, you need to have certain safeguards. And I think that this is where it gets very difficult. Because of course, Myanmar, who has sovereignty over northern Rakhine, has to agree with whatever solution is found to ensure the safety. And this is not up to me to judge. But one thing I want to say, taking advantage of this important issue, as a starting point, I think it would be very important, or as a minimum, I think, that in the areas where people return, not just in Myanmar, but in any other situation, we have exactly the same situation, the same discussion in Syria, for example, or in Burundi, where we have complex repatriation. The humanitarian organizations that have responsibility for refugees or returnees should be present, because that presence is an additional, inspires confidence in the people that return could be safer. And that presence has been very unpredictable, as you know, in northern Rakhine in the last couple of years. And to answer your last question, this military developments that we have observed since November, I think, have made it actually more complicated, objectively, because we cannot go where there is active fighting, and there has been active fighting in some areas of northern Rakhine. Now, let's hope that this situation will be addressed so that that obstacle is removed, and then we will be able again to have the discussion on access. Access of humanitarian organization to areas of potential return, I think, is very important, and a very important confidence building measure that we will continue to insist upon.
I think we should go for a local media outlet now. Mr. Montosh from Daily Cox's Bazar. Please ask your question.
Local communities are affected as it used to. How you will support?
Shall I say a couple of things? So Antonio, and what he said at the beginning, talked quite a lot about this. And as he said, we had a very, very valuable discussion of exactly the ways in which local communities are affected last night with a group of representatives of local communities. So we heard about the environmental stresses, we heard about just all the congestion and the traffic, we heard about the impact on other public services, and it's very important to note that the international community has made promises to help with all those burdens. The World Bank, for example, has very important programs to address infrastructure needs and a variety of other programs, and some of those are starting to get going, and what we would like to see is the fastest possible implementation and delivery of those, of the benefits of those programs. I also want to emphasize that our own appeal, the UN's appeal, covers the needs of 300,000 local Bangladeshi people because of all these impacts. And so part of our plea to the world not to forget what's happened here is to get resources to meet all those needs that were described to us yesterday by local people themselves. And we also had a very good discussion of exactly this set of issues with the 3RC, who corroborated and provided lots of additional kind of evidence to us on what the needs are. So we will be taking that message back to the people who contribute to our appeals and ask them to contribute both for the continuing ongoing needs of the Rohingya, but also to the needs of local people.
Now we should go to a broadcast media. Mr. Ekram Chaudhary Tipu, would you please make your question?
Do you have any plan to send that Rohingya people to Myanmar?
You know, UNHCR or the UN does not send people back like a package. The UN accompanies, supports voluntary repatriation to people to their own country. So let me repeat what I said already. How do we obtain that result, which is the best result we can obtain? Voluntary repatriation of the Rohingya refugees to Myanmar is by ensuring that their apprehensions, their fears about going back are addressed, are eliminated. And like I said, some of them certainly are related to the poor conditions, the poor infrastructure, the poor services, and that we can work on together with the government of Myanmar. But there are many other, there are a few other important issues that need to be addressed. We have said many times that it would be so useful, I think, and I think the government of Myanmar knows this, if they send some positive signals, for example, by granting, there are many Rohingya who are still on the other side of this border. So, for example, granting them freedom of movement, which is still very limited for most Rohingya. Or, for example, solving the question of Rohingya people who are displaced inside Myanmar, not refugees here. There are many in the Sitwe area, for example. They live, frankly, I visited those camps 2 years ago. They live in very difficult conditions. And the government of Myanmar has already solved some of those, or opened up and let people go from some of the smaller camps. I think if they continued that, that would be a very positive signal of goodwill coming to the refugees here. Because if you don't send good signals, people will continue to be afraid. They have gone through a pretty bad experience, especially the latest arrivals 2 years ago in terms of violence and trauma and loss of life. So I think that to overcome that, there needs to be a strong signal of confidence from the other side.
Thank you. Now we'd like to go to a national local online news portal. Mr. Max, would you please make a question? I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you next.
The question I wanted to ask and have been asked already before, but the most important thing, I'd like to tell you a scenario that if you go to the camp, you will see local people are not getting jobs. The host community, the most affected one, since the camp started, they have suffered a lot. They are the most sufferers. Surprisingly, they are not getting the jobs despite having the best qualities. They know how to speak Rohingya language, they know how to speak Chittagonian dialects, but still they are not having any good jobs. So what is the immediate solution to give them good jobs? Because they are really capable of doing a lot of things. So this is great to know that. I'm very happy that you say 300,000 people will be under the project, including the host community. So do you have an immediate solution for getting the jobs despite having their good qualities, please?
Yes. Sorry. We heard yesterday, actually, in this area, in our discussions with the authorities, we were briefed about a very interesting project that is now being launched here to help the local community, especially young people that are in need of employment, have access to jobs. The UN is always happy to employ local people because of all the advantages that you have described. And we do it everywhere. But of course, they have to be of the adequate quality, and skills, because they have a responsibility. This is not a job just for the sake of giving a job. It's a job that carries important responsibility, life-saving responsibility, sometimes with people in distress. So we need to make sure that the people are qualified and are skilled. So we are going to work with the local community to help people get to that level. How do you present, how do you apply for a job? What skills do you need? How do you present them? You know, there are many techniques and there are many programs that can be carried out, and we're going to work on that in response to the request from the local community.
Can I just add one thing on this? Because yesterday, the three of us had a meeting with hundreds, actually, of colleagues who work for the UN dealing with the Rohingya issue. Most of those colleagues were Bangladeshi. They're mostly Bangladeshi, men and women. Contribution to relieving the suffering and the terrible experience the Rohingya have had. Today, when we were in the camp, we went to see some of those people, a lot of them young people, at work. They work for Filippo's organization, they work for Antonio's organization, other parts of the UN as well. I want to tell you, those young people are doing a fantastic job. They've got wonderful skills, they've got terrific temperament and enthusiasm, and they know they're making a difference. And as Filippo says, as time passes and their skills grow, we will be very happy if they can take on more senior roles and more responsibility. That's one of the things that the UN stands for in these circumstances.
Now our friend at extreme left.
আমি বাংলায় বলে আমি ট্রান্সলেট করি ঠিক আছে আমাদের কক্সবাজারটা বেসিক্যালি পর্যটন শহর আমাদের বাংলাদেশের সবচেয়ে বড় সম্পদ হলো কক্সবাজার পর্যটন কিন্তু গত 2 বছর ধরে কক্সবাজার শহরটা এনজিও শহরে পরিণত হয়েছে কক্সবাজার মোস্ট অফ হোটেল কটেজ থেকে শুরু করে সবকিছু এনজিওদের দখলে যার কারণে আমাদের পর্যটন শিল্প মোটামুটি ধ্বংসের মুখে তো এই এনজিওদের জন্য এনজিও কর্মীদের জন্য ওই ক্যাম্প এলাকায় আলাদা এনজিও করলে করে আমাদের পর্যটন শিল্পকে সেভ করা যাবে আমার ফার্স্ট কোয়েশ্চেন সেকেন্ড কোয়েশ্চেন হলো আপনাদের যে ত্রাণ কার্যক্রম এটাতে প্রচুর দুর্নীতি হচ্ছে গতকালকেও এক ট্রাক WFP চাউল ধরা পড়েছে এবং আপনাদের এমন কিছু কার্যক্রম আছে যে যেটি এনজিওর সাথে যে কন্ট্রাক্টরের সম্পর্ক ভালো তাকে কাজ দেওয়া হচ্ছে যার ফলে রোহিঙ্গারা এবং লোকাল কমিউনিটি তাদের এইড প্রপার এইড থেকে বঞ্চিত হচ্ছে সুতরাং এগুলো বন্ধ করার জন্য আপনার কি পদক্ষেপ নেবেন
Here is two questions. First one, actually what he mentioned is, Cox's Bazar is a tourist city. So now it seems it is becoming a NGO cities. So in this regard, the beauty of tourism of this city is losing. At the same time, what measures UN should take to stop this? And second question is, WFP rice distribution. It is not being done properly, and there are some, allegations you mentioned? Corruptions in it. So, is there any remarks on that?
I think that, of course, there is a presence, enhanced presence of international operators in Cox's Bazar, linked to the needs to support the refugees. But I don't see that that such a presence hampers the potential of tourism of the region, in the sense that it is a very beautiful region. I've never been here. There is a huge potential, touristic potential here, definitely. And I think that the presence of so many international representatives could be seen in the positive side. They will be the best propagandists of Cox's Bazar as a tourist destination, because they will find nice people to welcome them, wonderful beaches, and definitely, as Mark has already said, the side negative impacts, such as deforestation, are being addressed now by a very aggressive forestation plan. So I sincerely hope that in close cooperation between the UN system, the World Bank, other financial institutions, and the local authorities, we can create the conditions for a boom in tourism here in Cox's Bazar.
So, Mr.
should we just reply on the second? So thank you very much. And let me just say, as a general principle, the UN takes extremely seriously any allegations anywhere about money being provided to us being used corruptly or for the purposes not intended. And we have to do that for two reasons. Firstly, we have a moral responsibility to make sure that money where we raise gets to the people who need it. But secondly, the people who give us the money won't be doing it very long if they think that it's not being well used. Now, on the truth is, in all humanitarian settings, there are always challenges. And this risk of funds going astray is a real risk, and we have very sophisticated and comprehensive systems for dealing with that. We have zero tolerance for corruption, and every time there is a specific allegation with enough information to investigate it, we investigate it very, very seriously. So if there's anything you know that we don't know, please tell us, and I promise you we will pursue it. Thank you.
I want to add one point to what Mark said. You know, I remember that in my first visit to Bangladesh in July 2017, when I met the Prime Minister, she told me that she wanted UNHCR to get involved in registering, in giving identity to, identifying who the refugees were, in preparation, she was speaking before this big disaster, in preparation for eventual repatriation. So we took that very seriously. Then the whole big influx happened, so this made it even more urgent to register people. We worked very closely with the Ministry of Home Affairs and the rest of the government. And today we visited a very impressive project where people go and their identities are verified. They receive a UN card, which we hope will be linked to another system that WFP is leading, which will allow everybody to have card to have access to rations. Why do I say this? I say this for two reasons. One, this is also a preparation for repatriation because it allows us to identify people more easily. Second, finally, these people get an identity. For many of them, you know, this identity problem has been a big problem even back in their country. For many of them, this is the first time they have a document identifying them with a name, with a person. But third, back to your question, sir, it will make the delivery of aid safer and less open to corruption. I don't know anything about the allegation you mentioned. You know, this is not, I'm not privy to that, but I'm talking in general that WFP and UNHCR and IOM and all the organizations are really making very big efforts to make assistance more immune, more protected from any form of fraud. And all this system of identification is based on biometrics, is based on fingerprinting and iris scans. So really it's very difficult for people to fraud the system or for people with bad intentions to fraud the system once this is in place. And we're making very fast progress there, what we saw today.
Our friend here, please introduce yourself and make a question.
My name is Saiful Islam Choudhury. I'm from a daily newspaper, Doli Bakhali. Actually, my question is to Mr. Philip Agrandi. You were saying that where do we go from here? Actually, where actually we're going? And when actually this event will come? And another thing to Mr. Antonio, he was saying about that you cannot focus weather. Can you predict when the repatriation process would actually start? Same question. Two people. One is that where do we go from here and when?
So, you know, people should not think, and I think Antonio already mentioned that the UN has crystal balls. If we had crystal balls to see the future, the world would be maybe a better place, I don't know. But, and let me preempt the question that you asked Mr. Vittorino. I think we don't know when repatriation will come because it's not a matter, you know, we cannot say it will happen tomorrow or next month or next year. It will happen when these problems will be addressed. That's the question. That's the answer to your last question. Sorry, I'm stealing the answer from Mr. Vittorino, but he can add to that. And what do we go from there? But this is an important question because, of course, this is a camp that is very congested and living conditions are difficult, where opportunities are few. So I think that, you know, within the space that is given, that is available, we need to maximize our intervention. I have to tell you, I was here, this is my 4th visit, so I was here in October 2017, and if I compare October to last year when I came with the Secretary General, and this year, it's amazing the progress also in the conditions that has been made by the government of Bangladesh with our support. So I think that we will continue to improve those living conditions. The question was asked by Al Jazeera about whether there are other locations. You know, there is this plan about the island, and you know, if we are called upon by the government, of course, we will continue the technical discussion on the sustainability of that option, like Mr. Vittorino explained. And then I think thirdly, it is important to bring in other actors. You know, just tonight I will meet with the delegation of the Asian Development Bank. The World Bank is also here. These are different actors. They will not look at only at the humanitarian response. They will look at the impact that all this situation is having on the area, and this is also a part of what is next. And I really want to continue a bit what Antonio said. Of course, one should not see this as a positive situation. It's not a positive situation. But at least in this very tragic situation, this burden on the communities, let's look at the positive and try to draw the positive. There is a lot of interest. You know, when I was here last year, sorry to take one more minute, I remember that the president of the World Bank, the former president of the World Bank, Dr. Jim Kim, spoke about the World Bank being interested in helping develop the tourist potential of this region. And you know, since they are now attracted here by the crisis, let's have dialogue with these institutions to bring opportunities, not only to the refugees, but also to yourselves, to the communities, here.
I have seen our friends in the backside raising hands again and again. Please make your question.
My name is Sam John. I work for AFP News Agency. So I've got 3 quick questions. My first question would be, as Mr. Gandhi was saying, that we have assessed 100 villages in Rakhine. So would you care to give us some insights about what you have seen in those 100 villages? Number 1. Number 2 is a bit of repetition of what you just said. Would you care to give us some insights again on what UN has assessed in Masanchor? We have all known that the UN went to do an assessment that whether Masanchor will be ready. So I understand, I mean, you have already said a little bit about it, but if you can say something more precise about that. And my last question is about the human trafficking increasing in the camps. In the last couple of months, we have seen probably more than hundreds of people were only rescued by the law enforcement while they were being trafficked by British boats. And God forbid, we don't know how many have already escaped the rest. So what measures you have taken to stop that? Thank you very much.
On your first question, maybe again on Myanmar, like I said, we have assessed only a very small portion of the area, so it's a bit premature to draw general conclusions, but certainly there are many problems of infrastructure, which is inadequate and in some cases destroyed because there has been fighting there, as you know. We have not seen substantial progress on the issues that I mentioned, such as freedom of movement. They are still affecting the existing community there, and access by ourselves has been limited. That's part of the assessment itself. So these are the limitations. But we were able, in those about 100 areas, to identify at least initial projects that we can start to implement. This is what we submitted to the government of Myanmar in the area of health, livelihoods, water, sanitation, etc. And I hope that we can start implementing soon. You know, it's a very slow process. Like many people say, like Myanmar always says, it's a very complicated situation. We have to appreciate that. So we need to be patient and address it steadily, but in a pace that will not be as fast as we would like.
Well, just on the issue of trafficking, definitely that is one of our key concerns. We work very closely with the law enforcement authorities here, the police mainly, and as you can imagine, in a group of 1 million people, wherever they are, there are always a small minority who are prone to criminal activities. So we are not naive, and we know that we need to be very attentive to that. Different types of traffic, and especially traffic in human beings, in slavery, abuse, sexual abuse, and gender-based violence. We have very targeted programs on that point. Today we had a very, very enriching experience. We had a meeting, the three of us, with a group of men that are considered models of prevention of sexual abuse and gender-based violence. And then we had also a meeting with a group of women that are also mobilized for preventing domestic violence and gender-based violence. And from those meetings we had a very frank exchange. We came with the very clear idea that there is a commitment of those communities to engage themselves in preventing any kind of trafficking, especially sexual abuse, for instance. And that is a key issue for success. We can guarantee the conditions of law enforcement, but if the community itself does not mobilize to prevent gender-based violence, sexual abuse, it will be extremely difficult to do it from the outside. But we have fully trust of the law enforcement authorities here in Cox's Bazar to deal with those kind of threats.
Thank you, three principals. Thank you, media friends, for your active participations. We have some time constraint. Maybe you can give your questions to me, and I'll convey to the principals later on. So we have a modest snacks at Marina Ballroom. Please enjoy it. Thank you.